The Grand Music Academy always felt like another world to her, a place she could only watch from a distance. Every morning, she walked beside her mother through the side entrance, the one meant for workers. The main doors were for the students, the well-dressed families, and the guests who arrived in shiny cars. She always kept her head down, not because anyone told her to, but because she felt she didn't belong to the bright, echoing hallways filled with polished floors and golden lights. But even with her eyes lowered, she could hear everything: the warm-ups, the laughter, the little mistakes, the big voices, and the sound she loved more than anything: the piano. Her mother had been working at the academy for years. Cleaning was a tiring job, and most days she came home with sore shoulders, but she never complained. She simply said they were lucky to have work at a place where people respected music. The girl always nodded along, though she didn't say what she really felt, that listening to the piano made her chest feel full in a way she didn't fully understand. From childhood, music was the only thing that made her forget the noisy neighborhood where they lived, and the small apartment that barely held the two of them. She didn't have expensive hobbies or toys, but she did have something special. Behind their building, someone had thrown out an old keyboard with several missing keys and a broken stand. While her mother thought it was junk, the girl had carried it inside with great care, wiping it clean as if she had found a treasure. It made strange sounds and often crackled, but it worked well enough for her to learn which key made which note. At night, when other kids played games or shouted in the streets, she taught herself small melodies, pressing each key softly so she wouldn't disturb her neighbors at the academy. She always walked slowly whenever she passed the rehearsal halls. Even though she was supposed to wait in the storage area or sit quietly where her mother worked, she found every excuse to move around. Her mother sometimes scolded her for wandering, but she also knew the girl wasn't trying to cause trouble. She was simply drawn to something beautiful. One hall, the largest one, held a grand piano so shiny it reflected the ceiling lights like water. It was famous in the academy, not just because of its size, but because of the artists who had played it. Photos of those musicians hung on the hallway walls. She would study those photos carefully, wondering how a person became so talented, wondering if they were born with music or if they learned it through hard work. She wondered if someone like her, a cleaner's daughter with worn shoes and no lessons, could ever dream of touching a piano like that. Her mother always reminded her not to stand too close to the doors, afraid someone might think she was spying or causing problems. The academy staff wasn't unkind, but they had strict rules. Workers were workers. Students were students. Guests were honored. And the piano was for those who had earned the right to sit in front of it. Still, whenever she walked by, she felt something warm inside, like the soft glow of a candle. She listened to the students' practice scales, run through complex pieces, and sometimes get scolded by their teachers. They were talented, far more talented than she thought she could ever be, but something inside her whispered that she understood the music in a different way. She didn't know notes or terms, but she understood feelings. She knew how a melody could rise and fall like a heartbeat, or how soft keys could feel like a whisper in the dark. That day began like any other. Her mother woke her early, and they walked together to the academy, the sun barely touching the streets yet. The girl carried her mother's bag, which was heavy with cleaning supplies. It was their quiet routine. They didn't speak much on the way because mornings were peaceful, and speaking felt unnecessary. But as soon as they reached the academy entrance, something felt different. The place was unusually quiet. Normally by that time, the building buzzed with activity. Students rushing, teachers greeting each other, music drifting from practice rooms. But not today. Instead, the whole place felt like it was holding its breath. Her mother didn't notice anything odd, or maybe she didn't have the energy to question it. She had been assigned to clean the main rehearsal hall, a task she never liked because it meant finishing before anyone arrived for their practice. She always worried about interfering with someone's schedule. But today, since the hall was empty, she seemed relieved. The girl followed her inside. It was her first time entering the main hall, instead of peeking from the doorway. It felt huge, even larger than she imagined. The walls were tall, the lights soft, and the air carried the faint scent of polished wood. And there, in the center of the stage, stood the grand piano she had admired for so long. Her breath caught without her meaning to. She stared at the piano as if it were a living thing, as if it had been waiting for her. She didn't walk toward it. She didn't dare. She knew better than that. About her mother began gathering the equipment, sorting the mop bucket, and checking what needed to be wiped down. She told the girl to sit quietly near the wall and wait. So the girl sat, folding her hands in her lap, trying her best to behave. But the piano kept calling to her not in words, but in a gentle pull that grew stronger each minute. She tried to look away, but her eyes drifted back again and again. She wondered what it would feel like to sit on that bench, to touch the keys, to hear her own music echo in a room so large and beautiful. Her mother eventually realized she had forgotten a bottle of cleaner in the supply closet down the hall. She looked tired, already thinking of the time she'd lose by going back for it. She hesitated, but ended up asking her daughter to stay put. "I'll only be a minute," her mother said softly. "Don't move around, all right?" She nodded quickly, and her mother stepped out of the hall. The quiet that followed felt like a blanket falling over the room. For the first time, she was alone with the piano, completely alone. She listened to the silence, to the way it made her heartbeat sound loud in her ears. She didn't stand up immediately. She tried to look at the walls, the seats, the stage floor, anything that would distract her. But the piano kept pulling her attention back. Finally, she took a breath and rose from the bench where she sat. Her steps were slow, careful, almost afraid. She walked across the hall, her shoes tapping softly against the floor. She reached the stage stairs and climbed them one by one. Every sound she made felt too loud. Standing beside the piano, she felt smaller than ever. It was beautiful from afar, but up close it was breathtaking, the smooth black surface, the golden edges, the perfect shine. She reached out and gently brushed her fingertips along its side. Even that touch felt like a secret. She moved around to the bench. Her hands trembled a little. She wasn't supposed to be here. If someone walked in, she knew it could cause trouble for her mother. She knew it could end badly. But something inside her told her to sit down just for a moment. So she did. The bench was softer than she expected, and the piano seemed to glow beneath the lights. She placed her hands on her lap at first, unsure what to do. She didn't want to leave fingerprints on the keys, but she also couldn't resist the chance to feel them. After a long moment of hesitation, she finally lifted her hand and pressed one single key. A soft note rang out. It was clean, pure, nothing like the broken sound of her old keyboard at home. The note filled the hall and faded slowly, leaving her breathless. She wanted to stop, but her heart had other plans. Her fingers moved again, touching another key, then another. The tiny melody she formed was simple, but it stirred something deep inside her, a feeling she couldn't describe. She remembered the tunes she practiced at home, the ones she made up when she couldn't sleep because of loud neighbors or when her mother worked late. She pressed more keys, stringing together the sounds she held in her heart. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't trained, but it was hers. She didn't notice her breathing steadying or her shoulders relaxing. She didn't notice the smile forming at the edge of her lips. All she noticed was the music soft, slow, honest, and she didn't notice the door at the back of the hall slowly opening. She didn't see the figure standing there, listening, frozen in place. She didn't know her life was about to take a turn she never dared to dream of. All she knew in that moment was the piano, and the way it made her feel like she belonged to something beautiful at last. She didn't hear the footsteps. She didn't sense the presence behind her. All she knew was the feeling that rose inside her as she played, the way the notes seemed to float in the air and settle gently around her like something warm. Her fingers moved slowly at first, then with a little more courage as she searched for the melody that had lived in her mind for so long. She had never heard anyone else play it, yet she felt as if the tune belonged to this hall more than it ever belonged to her old keyboard at home. Her hands trembled a little as she continued. The sound came out clearer and richer than anything she had ever produced. It wasn't perfect, and sometimes her fingers slipped to the wrong key, but each mistake felt like part of the story she was telling through the music. She wasn't thinking about anything else, not about rules, not about what she wasn't allowed to do, not about the trouble she might be in. For the first time, she felt free. The hall was so big that the notes seemed to echo back at her, almost like the room was responding to her. She felt small sitting there, but the music felt bigger than everything else, like it filled every corner of the space. She didn't know it, but the person standing near the door felt the same thing. He had come into the building early, expecting silence, expecting to warm up before his work for the day began. Instead, he heard a sound he didn't expect, a gentle tune played with a kind of honesty no trained student had shown in a long time. He didn't step closer at first. He just listened. The music was soft, unsure, but full of something he recognized immediately. Some people played with skill. Others played with emotion. But this was different. This was pure. It was the kind of sound that came only from someone who needed music, not someone performing it. Meanwhile, she continued playing, unaware of the quiet audience she had gathered. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the rhythm guide her. She imagined the broken keyboard at home, the flickering hallway light, the cold floor under her feet. But here, everything felt warmer. She felt like the piano wanted her to play, as if the keys welcomed her touch despite her lack of training. She leaned forward slightly as the melody grew. Her breath steadied, matching the pace of the notes. Her shoulders relaxed. She didn't think she had ever felt so connected to anything. This moment wasn't planned. It wasn't something she dreamed would ever happen. It just was. The man at the door wasn't the only one who heard her. A woman who worked in the next room walked past the hall and froze. She stepped back quietly and peered in, trying to see who had arrived early. When she saw it was the cleaner's daughter sitting at the piano, her eyes widened. She wasn't angry, just shocked. She had never seen anyone play with such emotion, without even knowing if they were allowed to be there. She didn't enter. She didn't want to break the moment. Instead, she signaled another staff member nearby, and soon another person appeared beside her. Within minutes, a small group of people stood outside the hall, watching silently. No one moved. No one wanted the girl to stop. Inside, the girl still had no idea. She played another part of her tune, one she had always kept hidden because it felt too personal. It reminded her of nights when she waited for her mother to come home from work, sometimes too late, sometimes too tired to speak. She poured all those feelings into the notes, nothing heavy, nothing dark. Just the simple truth of a child who wished for quieter days and softer nights. The piano responded with a warmth she had never experienced. She didn't know how long she played. Maybe only a few minutes. Maybe longer. Time didn't matter. The hall felt like it belonged to her in that moment, even if she knew deep inside that a D-I-D-N T, her mother, still hadn't returned, which made her play even more carefully. She wanted to stop, she really did. She knew the rules. She knew she shouldn't risk her mother's job. But something inside her whispered, just one more moment. Just one more note. So she kept going. At last, she reached the end of her little melody. It wasn't a grand finish. It wasn't anything fancy. It faded softly, like a quiet breath, disappearing into the silence of the wide room. She let her hands rest on the keys for a second, feeling the smooth surface under her fingertips. Then she slowly lifted her head. Her heart dropped. There were people behind her. Not one, not two, but several more than she could count right away. They stood near the door and around the walls, all staring at her with looks she couldn't understand. She jumped off the bench so quickly that her knees hit the edge of it. Her face grew warm, and her hands started shaking. She stepped back, almost tripping over her own shoes. Her eyes darted around, searching for her mother, but she didn't see her. For a moment, she wished she could disappear. She wished she had never touched the piano. She wished she had never walked onto the stage. The man closest to her took a small step forward. He didn't look angry. In fact, he looked surprised, deeply surprised. His eyebrows were slightly lifted, and his mouth was parted as if he didn't know what to say. "That was you?" he asked softly. She didn't answer. Her voice felt stuck in her throat. She just nodded once, her eyes lowering again. No one spoke for a few seconds, though the silence felt heavier now than before. She didn't know what they wanted. She didn't know if she had done something terribly wrong. She backed up another step, her hands twisting together nervously. Finally, another person, a woman with kind eyes, spoke up. "How long have you been playing?" she asked. The girl swallowed hard. "I don't." She started, but her voice broke. She tried again. "I don't really know how to play. I just touched the keys." The group exchanged glances. It wasn't a mocking look. It wasn't disbelief. It was something closer to amazement. The girl didn't recognize it, because she had never been looked at that way before. One of the staff members stepped forward from the group. "Do your parents play?" "Your mother?" She shook her head quickly. "No, my mother just cleans here." She regretted saying it immediately. She felt like she had said something wrong, but no one frowned. No one sighed. Instead, they looked even more surprised. "So you learned on your own?" the man asked. She nodded again, her hands still shaking. The woman with kind eyes stepped a little closer, slowly, gently, as if approaching a frightened bird. "You played beautifully," she said. The girl blinked, confused. I made mistakes," she whispered. The woman smiled softly. "Everyone does. But you didn't play like someone guessing. You played like someone who feels the music." She paused. Not many people can do that. Even trained students struggle with that. The girl didn't know how to respond. She looked down at her shoes, unsure if she was allowed to accept such words. Before anyone could say something else, the door opened again, and her mother walked in, holding the bottle of cleaner she had gone to fetch. She stopped instantly when she saw the group gathered around her daughter. Her eyes widened, and panic washed over her face. "What happened?" her mother asked, rushing forward. The girl stepped aside, her heart racing. "I'm sorry," she whispered to her mother. "I didn't mean to. Her mother turned pale. "Did she touch anything?" she asked the group nervously. "Did she break something?" "I'm so sorry." She wasn't supposed to. The man closest to her mother shook his head. "Nothing is broken," he said. "Your daughter was playing." Her mother froze. Her eyes moved from the man to her daughter, then to the piano, and back to her daughter again. "Playing?" she echoed, her voice small. "Yes," the woman with the kind eyes said gently, stepping forward. "And she plays with a natural talent we don't see often." Her mother blinked in disbelief. "No, she doesn't know how to play. She doesn't have lessons." She just has an old keyboard. That makes it even more incredible, the man said. She didn't play like a trained student. She played like someone who has music inside her. The girl watched her mother's face shift fear, confusion, disbelief, and something else she couldn't name. She thought her mother might scold her or lead her out of the hall quickly. But instead, her mother seemed frozen, unsure what to do. The staff didn't crowd closer. They gave the girl and her mother a bit of space, as if they understood this was overwhelming. "We don't want her to get in trouble," the woman said softly. We want to understand how she learned to play like that." She glanced at the piano. "That melody, did she write it herself?" Her mother looked at her daughter slowly. "Did you?" The girl shrugged a little, embarrassed. "I just played something I always play at home." A quiet gasp passed through a few members of the group. "At home," the man repeated. "On a broken keyboard?" She nodded. The woman smiled again, warmer this time. "Then what you did today is even more special." The girl didn't feel special. She felt scared. She didn't know what was going to happen next. She didn't know if her mother would lose her job because of this. But before any bad thought could take root, the man stepped forward and said something that changed the air in the room. "May I hear you play again?" The girl's breath caught. Her mother looked shocked. The group waited silently. "Only if you want to," the man added gently. "No one will force you." The girl stood quietly, unsure. Her heart beat fast. Her hands felt cold. But somewhere beneath the fear, that small warm feeling, the one she always felt when listening to the piano, began to glow again. She looked at the piano. Then she looked at her mother. Her mother didn't say yes. She didn't say no. But her eyes softened just a little, and that was enough. The girl stepped. The hall grew so quiet that the girl could hear her own breathing. She stood still for a moment, afraid to move, afraid to make the wrong choice. The piano in front of her looked the same as it had a few minutes earlier, but everything else felt different. Now there were eyes watching her, waiting for something she didn't think she could give. The man who had spoken stood calmly, not rushing her. The others behind him whispered softly among themselves, but no one stepped closer. No one tried to push her. They simply waited, as if the room belonged to her now, and they were guests. Her mother stood off to the side, squeezing the bottle of cleaner in her hands. Her expression was a mix of fear and uncertainty. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know what it meant for her daughter to play again in front of all these people. But she didn't stop her. The girl took a small breath and moved towards the bench. This time her steps were different, slower, heavier, filled with the weight of what she was about to do. She could feel her pulse in her fingers. What if she made a mistake? What if they realized they were wrong about her? What if she disappointed them and made everything worse for her mother? She reached the bench and gently touched its edge. She sat down carefully, her back straight, her hands resting on her lap. The piano keys looked bright under the lights, almost too bright. She had never felt nervous touching her broken keyboard at home, but here, the keys seemed to stare right back at her. The man spoke softly. "Play whatever you want. It doesn't have to be long." She nodded, though the knot in her chest tightened. She lifted her hands, hesitated, then lowered them again. Her palms felt cold and slightly sweaty. She looked at her mother one more time, silently asking for permission. Her mother gave a small nod. It wasn't big or confident, but it was enough. The girl inhaled deeply and placed her fingers on the keys. The first sound she made was almost too soft. She pressed gently, unsure if she should even continue. But the note floated through the hall like a thin ribbon, delicate but clear. The man closed his eyes for a second, listening. Allowing the sound to settle. She pressed another key, this time a bit stronger. The second note followed the first, matching it, building on it. Slowly, her breathing steadied. Her shoulders loosened. Her fingers remembered the melody she had played earlier, the one she made up during the long nights at home. When the world felt too loud, she began playing it again. But this time something changed. It wasn't just a simple tune anymore. The confidence she lacked earlier grew with each note. She added small details, an extra key here, a gentle pause there. She let the music move the way it wanted to, letting her heart speak through her fingers. The people behind her fell silent. They leaned forward slightly, caught in the calmness of the sound. No one recorded her. No one interrupted. They simply watched a girl they had never paid attention to before bring life into the quiet hall. Her mother's eyes softened as she listened. She had always known her daughter loved music, but she had never heard her play like this. She felt something stir inside her, something she didn't expect. Pride and fear. Because she knew moments like this didn't happen to people like them. They didn't belong to this world of grand stages and polished floors. But her daughter didn't seem out of place. Not at all, Doc. The girl continued playing, letting the melody rise gently. She still made mistakes, but instead of stopping, she flowed past them gracefully. She didn't panic when her finger hit a wrong key. She kept going, letting the music pull her back on track. Near the end of the tune, she slowed down, letting the notes linger before they faded. When she finished, the silence that followed felt heavier than before, but not in a frightening way. It was the kind of silence that comes after something meaningful. The man opened his eyes, and the group exchanged quiet looks. Then, slowly, softly, the woman with kind eyes clapped once. Just a single clap, then another. Then the rest joined in, not loudly, not in a dramatic way, but warmly. Their applause filled the hall like a soft wave. The girl froze, not sure what to do. No one had ever clapped for her before. She looked down at her hands, unsure whether she should smile or hide. Her mother seemed stunned too, almost afraid to believe what she was seeing. She stepped slightly forward, confused, watching these people applaud her daughter as if she had just performed on stage. When the clapping faded, the man stepped closer to the stage. "Do you take lessons anywhere?" he asked. The girl shook her head. "No, sir. I just play at home sometimes." He nodded thoughtfully. "Have you ever thought about learning?" She hesitated. She didn't want to lie, but she didn't want to sound foolish either. "I always wanted to, but we can't. I don't think we can afford it." Her mother looked at the ground, embarrassed. It wasn't that she didn't want to give her daughter lessons. Life simply hadn't allowed it. The woman with kind eyes stepped forward. "Money isn't the first thing to worry about. What matters is potential, and she has that." Her mother blinked, confused. "Potential? She's never even learned the basics. She doesn't know how to read music." "That's what makes this even more unbelievable," the man replied. "She played with emotion, not technique. Technique can be taught. Emotion can't." The girl listened quietly, trying to understand their words. She didn't think she was special. She had always assumed anyone could play the way she did if they just listened closely enough. But the way these people spoke made her wonder if she had something she didn't even know existed. "Does she play anything else?" Someone asked from the group. The girl shook her head. "I make up little things, but that's all." She shrugged slightly. "I don't know if they count as songs." "They count," the man said firmly. "Trust me, they count." Her mother stepped forward, still unsure how to react. "Please," she said softly. She didn't mean to cause trouble. "She won't touch the piano again." "I'm so sorry if—" "No," the woman interrupted gently. "She didn't cause trouble? She showed us something beautiful." Her mother looked at her, surprised. "But the rules—" "Rules matter," the man agreed, but so does recognizing talent when we see it. The girl watched them carefully, trying to understand what they wanted from her. She didn't like being the center of attention. She wasn't used to it. She wished she could hide behind the piano instead of sitting at it. "What's your name?" Someone asked Dot. She gave her name softly. They repeated it, as if tasting the sound of it, remembering it. The man then asked, "Would you like to learn how to play properly?" "Not today, not all at once, but someday." She felt her heart flutter. "Someday," she whispered. "If it's possible." Her mother stepped closer to her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "We can't make promises about lessons," she said quietly, trying to protect her daughter from disappointment. "It's difficult for us." The man nodded. "I understand. But there might be a way." The girl's breath caught. A way? What did that mean? She didn't want to get her hopes up. She didn't want to believe in something that could disappear as quickly as it came. The staff exchanged looks again, silently communicating Dot. Then the woman said, "There's someone you should meet. Not today, but soon. Someone who would want to hear her play. Someone who understands talent, real talent." Her mother's eyes widened. "Who?" she asked carefully. The woman smiled. "A person who doesn't often come here, but visits from time to time. A person known for shaping musicians." The girl listened closely, wondering who they meant. The man continued, "If what we heard today is truly natural, then this isn't something that should be ignored, not even by those of us who follow the rules." Someone else in the group added, "Music should not belong only to those who can afford it." The girl felt her chest warm at those words. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't even know if this conversation would lead to anything real. But for the first time in her life, she felt like someone saw her, not as the cleaner's daughter, not as a child who wandered the halls, but as someone who mattered. Her mother looked unsure but no longer afraid. She gave her daughter a small smile, the kind she rarely showed, the kind that told her she wasn't in trouble. The man stepped closer to the piano. "Would you like to come back tomorrow?" he asked softly. The girl blinked. "To play?" "Yes, just for a little while. We won't tell any students yet. It will be quiet. You can use the small practice room instead of the main hall." He paused. "Only if you want to." She looked at her mother, who hesitated for a moment and then nodded. "If it doesn't disturb anyone," her mother said carefully. "It won't," the man assured her. The girl felt a small smile rise at the corner of her lips. Something shy and uncertain, but real. "I would like that," she whispered. The group exchanged pleased looks. Dot as the girl stood from the bench and stepped down from the stage. She didn't know that this simple moment, this quiet yes, would change everything. She didn't know who was coming to hear her. She didn't know how many doors were about to open. She only knew one thing. Tomorrow, she would touch the keys again, and the world she thought she didn't belong to might not be as far away as she believed. Part 4 will be written here in approximately 1,700 words as a continuous. Natural, human-centric narrative without headings. Simple English, and no restricted names. The moment the last note faded, the room fell into a silence so heavy that the girl felt it press against her chest. She slowly turned around, her small heartbeat rushing like a drum in her ears. She expected to see no one, maybe only her mother returning with cleaning cloths. Instead, she found herself staring at a line of people she had only seen on posters along the academy walls. Her mouth fell open. Her mother was frozen near the doorway, her hand still holding a half-filled spray bottle. The older woman looked terrified, as if she was waiting to be told she had done something terrible without even knowing what it was. The girl felt her own fear rising, because she knew she had touched something she wasn't supposed to touch. She had gone too far. She had taken a risk she had sworn she would never take. For a moment, Nobody moved. It was almost unreal, as if time had paused and everyone was trapped inside a painting. Then one of the men stepped forward. He was known for teaching some of the most talented musicians in the country, and even though the girl had never spoken to him, she recognized him from the academy halls. His eyes were soft yet sharp, filled with an expression she didn't understand. Her first thought was that he was angry. She quickly stood up from the piano bench and lowered her head. Her hands trembled at her sides, and she felt her cheeks heat up from embarrassment. She wanted to say something, maybe an apology, but her voice refused to come out. Her mother tried to step forward as if to defend her, but fear kept her in place. The man looked at the piano, then at the girl. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but didn't. Instead, he simply stared at her hands. The same small hands used to wipe tables, fold laundry, and hold old broken keys on a second-hand keyboard dot. Then he said something so unexpected that both the girl and her mother froze. "Play again." The girl lifted her head quickly, unsure if she heard him correctly. Her mother's eyes widened in shock. It didn't make sense. She had thought she was about to be scolded, maybe even blamed for sneaking in. Instead, this disrespected instructor wanted her to play. She looked around uncertainly. More people were entering the hall. Some were famous artists who had performed on grand stages around the world. Others were teachers who rarely ever smiled in the hallways. Students peeked from behind them, whispering to each other, eyes filled with curiosity and excitement. It was too much. For a second, the girl felt like she needed to run. She wasn't used to eyes on her. She wasn't used to attention at all. She wanted to hide behind her mother, but the man waiting in front of her didn't seem angry. He seemed hopeful. Her mother finally found her voice. It came out small and shaky. She didn't mean any harm. Please, she didn't know. The man gently raised a hand to stop her. "She knows music," he said softly. "Better than many who train here." The girl felt a strange jolt inside her chest. She didn't know if she believed him, but hearing those words made her feel like her feet were glued to the floor. She slowly sat back down on the piano bench, her fingers hovering above the keys. The hall grew silent again. The audience was much larger now. Nearly half the academy had somehow gathered. Some were confused, some doubtful, some excited, but all of them had their attention fixed on her. She took a deep breath. Her fingers shook as she pressed the first key. The sound vibrated softly through the hall. She closed her eyes for just a moment and pictured her tiny room at home, the broken keyboard, the quiet nights when she practiced after her mother fell asleep. And she began. The melody came out smoother this time, although she still felt the weight of every pair of eyes on her. But as the music flowed, she forgot the crowd, the fear, and the worry. She let the same feelings that had guided her in the first performance lead her again. She didn't think about the right notes, or the right way to sit, or how a professional musician might play. She simply let her emotions shape the sound out as she played. She didn't notice the way the instructors leaned closer, how the legendary artists exchanged looks that carried a mix of surprise and admiration. She didn't see the director of the academy entering the hall, drawn by the sound. She didn't hear the whispers of awe or the quiet discussions happening behind her. She was lost in the music. When she finally stopped, she slowly opened her eyes. The sound of her own breathing filled her ears. She waited for someone to say something, anything. She expected applause or scolding or confusion. But again, the room was silent. This silence was different, though. It wasn't heavy or frightening. It was full, warm, like the moment before someone gives good news. Then the applause began. It wasn't loud at first, just a few people. But it grew into a wave, filling the hall with a sound she had never expected to hear for herself. Her mother covered her mouth with both hands as tears filled her eyes. She looked overwhelmed, her emotions too strong to hide. The girl felt something twist in her chest. She didn't know if she should smile, cry, or run away. She only sat there quietly, unsure how to react. One of the legendary artists stepped forward. He had gray hair, kind eyes, and a soft smile. He leaned down so he could speak directly to her. "Where did you learn to play like that?" he asked. She hesitated. "At home," she whispered. "On an old keyboard. It doesn't work right." A few people exchanged astonished looks. "Who taught you?" he asked. She shook her head. "No one taught me. I just tried things until they felt right." The artist let out a small breath, like he had just discovered something precious. "That," he said, "is called a gift." Her mother stepped forward, clearly unsure whether she was allowed to speak. "She just likes music," she said softly, trying to stay humble. "It helps her pass time when I work." One of the academy teachers looked at the mother with sympathy. "Your daughter has something rare," she said gently. "Something not many people are born with." The hall buzzed with whispers again. Students murmured excitedly, talking about how unbelievable it was. Some looked amazed, others a little jealous, but most of them seemed genuinely impressed. The director of the academy stepped closer. He had a serious face, but warm eyes, and when he spoke, his voice was calm yet firm. "Would you be able to play one more piece?" The girl blinked. She hadn't expected that. She looked at her mother, unsure what to do. Her mother gave a small nod, though she still looked confused and scared. She wasn't used to standing in a room filled with powerful people. She didn't know what was safe to say or do. The girl turned back to the piano. Her fingers brushed the keys again, and she felt the same spark she had always felt when she played at home. This time, she chose a softer piece, something simple but full of emotion. A tune she had made up during a rainy night when her mother was sick, and she had felt lonely. As she played, the audience listened with a quiet intensity. Even the students who usually struggled to stay still were frozen, afraid to miss even a second. When she finished, the hall filled with another round of applause. This one was louder, stronger, and filled with admiration. Her mother wiped her tears. She had never seen her daughter shine like this. She had always known the girl loved music, but she never imagined others would see her talent too. The director stepped forward again. "You should come back tomorrow," he said kindly. "We want to hear more from you." Her mother's breath caught in her throat. "Sir, we can't afford." "You won't have to," he interrupted gently. "We will discuss everything. She deserves a chance." The girl felt her heart swell. She didn't fully understand what this meant, but she knew it was something big, something life-changing. As more people approached her, asking questions and expressing praise, she felt overwhelmed, but also strangely peaceful. She had never asked for attention. She had only wanted to touch the piano once, to feel real keys under her fingers. But that one moment changed everything. By the time the hall started to empty, the girl stood quietly beside her mother. Neither of them spoke. They were both trying to understand what had just happened. The mother gently held her daughter's shoulders, guiding her toward the exit. The girl glanced back at the piano one last time. It no longer felt like something she wasn't allowed to touch. It felt like something that was waiting for her. That day had started like any other. But by the end of it, the cleaner's daughter had done something no one expected. She had touched the piano, and the world had listened. Part 5 will be written here in approximately 1,700 words as a continuous, natural, human-centric narrative without headings. Using simple English, and with no restricted names, the girl barely slept that night. Even when she closed her eyes, she kept seeing the row of people who had watched her play. She kept hearing the applause, feeling the strange rush inside her chest, the same rush she felt when music carried her away from the world. Her mother hardly slept either. She kept walking to the window, then back to the bed, then back to the window again. It was as if she didn't trust the day to come. She was afraid that the moment had been a dream and everything would go back to normal. But the morning arrived, quiet and calm, and the girl woke up with the same nervous excitement she had fallen asleep with. Her mother tried to act normal, packing lunch for work, tying her hair, and getting ready for the long day. But every so often she stopped and stared at her daughter, as if trying to memorize her face. Something had changed overnight, something gentle but powerful. When they reached the academy, the hallways were busier than usual. Students whispered to each other as they walked past. Some stopped and stared. Others smiled shyly. The girl lowered her head, unsure how to react. She had always been invisible here. Now people seemed to know who she was. Her mother stayed close, almost protectively, as if she didn't want anyone to misunderstand anything. The director had asked them to return, but he hadn't said what time or where to go. They stood in the lobby, waiting nervously. After a few minutes, the instructor, who had first spoken to her the day before, came toward them. His expression was calm, confident, and surprisingly warm. "I'm glad you're here," he said. "Come with me." The girl followed him, her mother walking on the other side. They entered a smaller room with a piano in the center. Several people were already seated, artists, teachers, and even a few students who had been allowed to observe. Their voices hushed as the girl entered. She felt suddenly small, like a child standing in front of a group of important strangers who were all waiting for her to do something amazing. Her hands felt cold. Her heart felt too big. She glanced at her mother, who gave her a faint but encouraging nod, though she herself looked scared. One of the artists, the same one who had spoken gently to her the previous day, smiled at her. "Relax," he said. "We just want to understand how you think when you play." She didn't know how to explain that she didn't think much at all. She only felt. She didn't know words like phrasing or dynamics or techniques. She had never been taught. She had only listened to the world, and somehow music came out. The director spoke next. "We will ask you to play a few small pieces today. Nothing difficult. Just play as you normally do." She nodded shyly and sat down at the piano. The first piece they gave her was simple, a beginner's tune. She played it gently, with a soft touch. Halfway through, the instructors exchanged looks. She had changed the rhythm in a way that made the simple tune sound almost new. One of the teachers asked her, "Why did you play it like that?" She hesitated. "It felt nicer," she said quietly. "But no one taught you to?" She shook her head. The teacher leaned back in her chair, surprised. "Interesting," she murmured. Next, they gave her a slightly harder piece. She studied the sheet for a moment, though her reading was slow. After a few minutes, she played it without fear, even adding her own softness to it. The artists watching her didn't interrupt. They didn't whisper. They only watched, absorbed. Her mother stood near the door, not daring to sit or move too much. She held her hands together tightly, like she was praying for things to go well. After she finished her third piece, the older artist stepped closer. "Do you know what feeling this song has?" he asked. She thought for a moment. "It's lonely," she said, "but not sad. Like when you're waiting for someone." The room became quiet. The man looked at the others. "She understands emotion," he said quietly. "She feels it in her own way." Another teacher added, "She hears music differently from others. She doesn't follow the rules, but she somehow plays the truth of the song." The girl didn't fully understand what they meant. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't trying to be better than anyone. She only wanted to play the way the music came to her heart. For the next hour, they tested her with different tasks. They played a melody on the piano and asked her to copy it. Not only did she copy it, she added small changes that made it sound warmer. They tapped a rhythm on the table. And she copied that too, smiling a little because it felt like a game. Then they hummed a simple tune and asked her to find the notes. She found them faster than anyone expected. Her mother watched all of this with a mix of confusion and pride. She had always known her daughter had a spark, but she had never known that spark was something extraordinary. Finally, the director asked everyone to step outside for a moment. The girl and her mother remained inside the room alone. Her mother immediately hugged her. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered, her voice unsteady. "I don't even understand what they're doing, but I can see how amazed they are." The girl hugged her back, relieved to be near her mother again. The room felt too big without people talking, too quiet now that the tests were over. After a few minutes, the door opened and everyone returned. The director carried a folder in his hand. His expression was thoughtful but gentle. "We discussed everything," he said. "And we all agree." Her mother's breath caught. "We want to offer your daughter a place at the academy." The girl blinked, confused. "A place?" "Yes," he said. "A scholarship. Full support. Training, guidance. Everything she needs to grow." Her mother took a step back, overwhelmed. "But sir, this is too much. She's just a child." She is a child with rare talent," the instructor interrupted softly. "She will learn quickly. She will shine. You only need to let her." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to ruin her life. I don't want her to struggle. I don't want her to feel pressure." "No pressure," the older artist said gently. "Only opportunity." The girl stood still, her heart thumping so loud she felt it in her fingertips. She didn't fully understand how big the offer was, but she understood one thing clearly. This chance was something people dreamed about, something families prayed for, something she never imagined would come her way. The director continued, "We'll help with transportation, training, uniforms, instruments, everything she needs. She won't be a burden to you. She be welcomed here." Her mother finally broke down crying. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. The girl went to her and held her tightly. One of the teachers spoke softly. "She has something we can't teach. We can shape it, but we can't create it. Only she can bring that to the world." Her mother slowly lifted her head. If she wants this," she whispered, "then I won't stop her." All eyes turned to the girl. She looked at her mother's tear-stained face, then at the group of people waiting for her answer. Her hands felt warm. Her chest felt full. "I want to learn," she said quietly. "I want to play more." A wave of relief passed through the room. The director smiled. The artists nodded. The instructors exchanged satisfied looks. Her mother hugged her again, this time with a sense of certainty. "Then we will do this together," she said softly. The rest of the morning was filled with planning. They discussed schedules, lessons, and how the academy would help her settle in. They spoke with her mother about the support they would provide. They spoke with her about what she wanted to learn. But even though everyone was talking, the girl still felt like she was in a dream. Everything was happening so fast. Yesterday, she had been hiding in the corner while her mother worked. Today, she was being welcomed into a world she had only admired from far away. When they finally left the academy that afternoon, the girl held her mother's hand tightly as they walked outside. The sun felt brighter than usual. The street felt different. The world felt larger and warmer. Her mother looked at her as they walked. "Your life is changing," she said in a soft voice. "I don't know how everything will go, but I know one thing: you earned this." The girl smiled shyly. "I just played," she whispered. "Yes," her mother said, squeezing her hand. and that was enough to make the world turn toward you. As they reached their home, the girl looked back at the direction of the academy. She didn't feel scared anymore. She felt ready. She felt excited. She felt like something inside her had finally opened, something that had been waiting for the right moment. The cleaner's daughter had touched a piano, and now legendary artists were preparing to guide her future. But this was only the beginning. Part 6 will be written here in approximately 1,700 words as a continuous, natural, human-centric narrative in simple English, without headings and without restricted names. From the moment the girl began her first day at the academy, everything felt new and unfamiliar. The hallways seemed bigger, the rooms seemed brighter, and every sound, even footsteps on the polished floor, echoed deeper inside her chest. She held her mother's hand tightly as they walked through the building, her heart fluttering between excitement and fear. Her mother, dressed in the same uniform she always wore for cleaning, looked around quietly. She seemed unsure if she should walk beside her daughter like any other parent or remain in the background as she always had. But the girl made sure to keep her hand wrapped around hers. Not caring who saw Dot, an administrator met them and guided them toward her new class. Her mother whispered encouragement the entire time, her voice trembling slightly. The girl felt the squeeze of her mother's hand each time someone important walked by. When they reached the classroom door, her mother stopped and bent down a little so their eyes could meet. "Be brave," she whispered. "Just be you." The girl nodded, though nervousness sat stubbornly inside her chest. Then she walked in. The classroom was filled with young students, some her age, others older. They looked up as she entered. Some whispered, some smiled gently, others seemed curious. She didn't know what any of them thought of her, but she reminded herself that she wasn't here to impress them. She was here to learn Dot. Her teacher greeted her with a warm smile. "Welcome," she said kindly. "We're glad to have you." The day began slowly, with listening exercises and simple lessons. The girl felt lost at first, especially when they were asked to read sheets of music she could only understand in pieces. But every time she felt confusion rising. She remembered yesterday, the artists watching her, the applause, the soft voices telling her she had a gift. She tried her best. She paid attention. Even when her classmates finished faster than she did, she practiced quietly, repeating the same notes until they finally made sense. She asked questions in a small, shy voice, and her teacher answered patiently. During their first break, a boy approached her. He held his notebook awkwardly against his chest. "Is it true you played in front of the director?" he asked. She nodded. He smiled widely. "That's really cool. I freeze up in front of even 5 people." She didn't know what to say, so she simply gave a small smile back. By lunchtime, a few other students had introduced themselves. They didn't treat her like she was strange. They didn't treat her like she didn't belong. They treated her like someone they wanted to be friends with. And for the first time in her life, she felt she might actually fit somewhere. When the school day ended, her mother was waiting outside the building. Her smile grew the moment she saw her daughter walking toward her. "How was it?" she asked. The girl thought about everything: the lessons, the questions, the moments she felt lost, the tiny victories when she understood something new, the classmates who tried to talk to her. "It was good," she said softly. Her mother hugged her. "Then we keep going." For weeks, this became their routine. The girl attended classes, practiced until her fingers ached, and slowly learned how to read music properly. She learned how to control her hands, how to understand the rules she had never known existed. But even as she learned the rules, the instructors always reminded her that what made her special wasn't the rules she could memorize. It was the way she felt the music. You're not here to lose your heart One of the artists told her during a private lesson. "You're here to grow it." His words stayed with her. Every day she improved. Her shyness began to fade. She started speaking a little louder. She made a few friends. She even learned how to laugh in class without feeling afraid someone would look at her. Strangely, her mother watched this transformation with quiet joy. Every evening when they walked home together, she listened to her daughter talk about her lessons, her small mistakes, her progress. The girl didn't talk much, but when it came to music, words flowed out of her like water. One afternoon, a special notice went up across the academy. A small performance would be held for parents, guests, and artists who often visited the school. Students were allowed to showcase their progress in front of an audience. The girl felt her heart skip when she read it. She wasn't required to join, but her teacher approached her with a gentle smile. "You should perform," she said. The girl hesitated. "What if I make mistakes?" Her teacher knelt in front of her. "Everyone makes mistakes, even the best artists. What matters is that you share your heart with the audience." The girl swallowed nervously. The thought of performing again after everything that had happened felt overwhelming. But she remembered how she had felt that first day when she touched the piano. And she remembered the applause. "I'll try," she whispered. Her teacher hugged her gently. "That's all we ask of you." The days leading to the performance were filled with practice. She played until late, only stopping when her mother insisted she take a break. Her fingers grew tender, and sometimes she felt frustrated, but each time she stumbled, she tried again. She wanted to do her best. On the day of the performance, the hall was filled with people. Students waited anxiously backstage. Some paced. Some whispered prayers. Some tried breathing exercises. The girl simply stood quietly, her hands pressed together, her heart beating loudly. Her mother peeked in from the side entrance, giving her a small, brave smile. The girl felt her fear soften. When her name was called, she stepped onto the stage. The moment she sat at the piano, she remembered the first time she had played in a room filled with people. She remembered thinking she didn't belong there. But now she felt something different. She felt ready. She placed her fingers on the keys. The room fell silent. The melody she played wasn't something from the academy books. It wasn't a piece anyone had taught her. It was something she had made herself, a simple tune born from the nights she watched her mother clean, from the long walks home, from all the moments she felt small but hopeful. The audience listened with full attention. There was no noise, no whispering, no shifting. They listened to the emotion in her playing, to the softness, the depth, the honesty. Her mother held her breath the entire time. One hand pressed to her chest. And when the girl played the final note, the hall burst into applause. Strong, warm applause. Some people stood up. Others wiped their eyes. Her teacher covered her mouth, clearly overwhelmed. The girl looked at the audience with wide, grateful eyes. She didn't feel fear. She didn't feel out of place. She felt like she belonged. After the performance, people came to speak to her, artists, instructors, guests. They praised her softness, her honesty, the emotion she poured into her music. Her mother stood beside her the whole time, holding her hand, tears glistening in her eyes. When they finally walked home that evening, the girl was quiet. But not because she was shy. She was filled with something warm and glowing. Her mother stopped under a streetlight and knelt so she could hold her daughter's shoulders. "I used to think our life was small," she whispered. "But you've shown me how big it can be." The girl hugged her tightly. In the weeks that followed, opportunities began opening for her small performances. Meetings with well-known artists, invitations to events. People began talking about her talent. Some even called her a rising star, but no matter how many people praised her, her heart remained gentle. She practiced every day with the same humility she had always had. She walked the halls with the same quiet steps. She held her mother's hand every morning before entering the academy. One evening, after a long day of lessons, she sat at the academy piano alone. She touched the keys gently, remembering the very first moment she had dared to play here. She had been scared, unsure, and hidden from the world. But now, she was someone people looked for. Someone people believed in. Someone whose music had touched hearts. Her mother entered quietly and stood beside her. "What are you thinking about?" The girl smiled softly. "About how everything started," she said. "Just one touch." Her mother nodded. "Some touches change everything." The girl played a soft tune, one she had made just for her mother. A warm tune filled with gratitude, love, and all the quiet bravery that had carried them through this journey. Her mother listened with tears in her eyes, knowing that her daughter wasn't just talented, she was rare, special, and full of light. And as the gentle music wrapped around them, the girl finally understood something deeply. This was her world now. Her future. Her gift. From the day she touched the piano, her life had changed forever. And this was only the beginning of the beautiful story she would share with the world.